I think the first time I knew what I wanted to do with my life was when I was about 4 years old. I was listening to an old Victrola playing a railroad song. The song was called Hobo Bill's Last Ride. And I thought that was the most wonderful, amazing thing that I'd ever seen, that you could take this piece of wax and music would come out of that box. From that day on, I wanted to sing on the radio. That was a big thing when I was growing up, singing on the radio. And the ultimate, the extent of my dream was to sing on the radio station in Memphis. Even when I got out of the Air Force in 1954, I came right back to Memphis and started knocking on doors at the radio station. And I tried several things. See, this was 1954, and I grew up in the 40s, and I heard all these great speeches like Winston Churchill. His most famous or infamous commencement exercise speech was one that consisted of 7 words. He stood before this graduating class and said, "Never, never, 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 never give up." And then somebody else said, "Every day in every way I'm getting better and better." I didn't especially believe that about myself, but I said it every day and I made myself believe it, and it worked. But I persevered. I never gave up my dream to, quote, sing on the radio. And that dream came true in 1955. Sam Phillips at Sun Records. There was a label called Sun Records in Memphis that was pretty hot with Elvis Presley and 2 or 3 locally well-known country acts and some black blues and gospel singers. And when I got out of the Air Force, I went and knocked on that door and was turned away. I called back for an interview 3 or 4 times, was turned away. So one morning, I found out what time the man went to work. I went down with my guitar and sat on his steps until he got there. And when he got there, I introduced myself, and he said, "You're the one that's been calling." I said, "Yeah." You know, I had to take the chance. He was either going to let me come in or he was going to run me off, turn me down again. But evidently, he woke up on the right side of bed that morning. He said, "Come on in, let's listen." So he did. He said, "Come back tomorrow and bring some musicians." So I went down to a garage where I worked, where my brother Roy worked, and met and was introduced to 2 musicians down there. Brought them back to the studio, and the next day was our first session. We recorded and released the songs that we recorded the second day. Yeah. It was very simple back then. You didn't worry about arrangements. It was 1-track recording. I read a book when I was when I was about 12 years old about an Indian named Lone Bull. Lone Bull had tried to go out and kill a buffalo. He slipped out of the village against his father's wishes and went out. It was going to be a hero and kill a buffalo and bring it back to the village so his family and the other people could have meat. The elders of the village knew about the buffalo herd out there. They knew it was there, and they were making plans to cut into the herd and cut off some buffalo and kill them and have meat for the whole winter and into the next spring. Lone Bull wanted to be a hero. He went out with his bow and arrow and killed a calf and ran the herd off into the next state or whatever. He drug his calf home. His family was fed, but they were ostracized from the village. They had to leave the village. And Lone Bull became a wanderer until he found a village that would take him in. And in that next village that he was taken in, he organized the buffalo hunt that winter. And they had more meat than this village had ever had before. So I learned from my mistakes. I think it's probably the best way. It's a very painful way to learn, but without pain, the old saying is there's no gain. And I found that to be true in my life. You miss a lot of opportunities by making mistakes. But that's part of it, is knowing that you're not shut out forever and that there's a goal there that you still can reach. So Lone Bull's philosophy was, I'm kicked out of this village, but I will grow up and I'll come into another one and I will do what I set out to do, and that was feed the people. So I'm feeding my people right now. You build on failure. You use it as a stepping stone. You don't close the door on the past. You don't try to forget the mistakes, but you don't dwell on it. You don't let it have any of your energy or any of your time or any of your space. You analyze it as you're moving forward and never fall in the same trap twice, which I can't say that I haven't been guilty of doing. But my advice is don't. If they're going to break your leg once when you go in that place, stay out of there. In my little world there in northeast Arkansas on the cotton farm, it was my brother Jack. He was kind of my inspiration, but he was 2 years older than I, and he was killed at the age of 14. I always wanted to be like him. And throughout the year, he was a strong person. He was a Bible student. He was in perfect shape physically. I always wanted to be like him. And when he died, my best friend was still my mother, and she always encouraged me to sing. Matter of fact, we were very poor, and she took in washing from the school teachers, washed their clothes to make money to give me singing lessons, voice lessons. After about 3 lessons, the voice teacher said, "Don't take voice lessons, do it your way." So I was glad for my mother that I didn't have to take them. My father was a man of love. He always loved me to death. We worked hard in the fields, but my father never hit me. I don't ever remember a really cross, unkind word from my father. He was a good, strong man, provided for his family. That was his sole purpose in life when I was growing up. And my mother, she was the musically inclined in the family. She played a little guitar and piano and loved to sing. And from the time I started trying to sing when I was a kid, she always encouraged me to do it. And I told her when I was about 12 I was going to sing on the radio, and she encouraged that dream. Musically, my inspirations were whoever was popular on the radio, Jimmy Rogers, the Carter family, which is my wife's family, black blues, black gospel, and gospel and white gospel groups like the Blackwood Brothers and the Chuck Wagon Gang, but cowboy singers like Gene Autry and Bob Wills. I like the image of the man with the white hat correcting all the wrongs out there. It goes back to that music teacher when I was 12 years old. After the 3rd lesson, she said, sing I forget the name of the popular country song of the day. I think it was a Hank Williams. No, it was too early for Hank Williams, I guess. But whatever the song was, I didn't sing it like the artist that sang it on the radio. And she said, "You're a song stylist." I said, "Always do it your way." And from the age of 12, I didn't forget that was the way I had to do it, because it was the way it was with me. I had to do it my way. I couldn't reach those notes singing those great songs like a lot of those singers could, but I could do it my way, and the way it felt good to me. And that's what music is all about, emotion. When I married June Carter, March 1st, 1968, my son was born March 3rd, 1970. My induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame, which was the ultimate for a country singer, in 1980. And then, of all things, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1989. Recognized my rockabilly roots, I suppose, but the big one for me, the most important one that meant more to me, was the Songwriters Hall of Fame. To recognize a talent that comes out of a person, comes from God through a person, really. That means more to me. It's on a little stand just as you come in my door. It's the first thing you see when you come in my house. Extremely proud of that. To know who you are and what you do, and then to have faith in your ability to do it. First of all, you gotta kind of know your limitations. In music business you're talking about, kind of know what your limitations are. Like I found out what mine were when I was 12. And in finding that out, I found out that there weren't too many limitations if I did it my way. I'm not talking about ego and arrogance and grandiose. I'm talking about self-esteem and confidence. That's vital, self-esteem and confidence. I think Sam Phillips saw the originality in my difference. Matter of fact, he said so. I think that's what it was all about with Sam Phillips and me. That's why he said, bring some musicians tomorrow and let's record. After he heard me the first day, he heard something that was different, not necessarily something that was good or exceptional or even good, but different. And he had had a lot of success recording people that sounded different. It's like a novelist writing far out things. If it makes a point, makes sense, then people like to read that. But if it gets off into left field and goes over the edge, you lose it. Same with musical talent, I think. If you can hold your listener, hold their attention, and sure you know what you're doing, and know that you're communicating. Performance is communicating. You got to communicate. If you got a song you're singing from your gut, you want that audience to feel it in their gut. And you got to make them think that you're one of them sitting out there with them too. They got to be able to relate to what you're doing. I start a lot more songs than I finish because I realize when I get into them, they're no good. I don't throw them away. I just put them away, kind of store them, get them out of sight. But I'll get an idea for a song that will gel in my mind for weeks or months, and then one day, just like that, I'll write it. Songwriting is a very strange thing, so far as I'm concerned. It's not something that I can say, next Tuesday morning I'm going to sit down and write songs. I can't do that. No way. If I say I'm going to the country and take a walk in the woods next Tuesday, then the probability is next Tuesday night I can write a song. Creative people have to be fed from the divine source. I do. I have to get fed. I have to get filled up in order to pour out. Really have to. I heard a speaker today say, when he's talking about drugs, alcohol, artificial stimulation, and the instant gratification syndrome, so youth itself is enough to ask for. It is with all that fire and energy and enthusiasm, exuberance, and eagerness and hunger. Youth itself, youth shouldn't be clouded by any chemical or anything. It's too somebody my age can easily know that too, that youth is too wonderful a thing to mess with while you got it. I graduated from high school in 1950 in a little town in Arkansas. Actually, it was the biggest, what they call cooperative school in the state. For a small country town, there were 1,100 students in this school. And I graduated as the vice president of my class. I wasn't all that high scholastically because I was writing a lot of poems and stories and songs at the time that I should have been studying more. The school was really important for me, and I was so disappointed in myself that I didn't make really good grades in math. On all the other subjects, I did very well. But school was really important to me. My parents, my mother and father, I think they had an 8th grade education, which was adequate for what they did with their lives then. But they wanted me, and they drilled in me, I had to graduate from high school. College was another hope that was almost unattainable for a cotton farm boy. There was no money for college, so I joined the Air Force. Korean War was breaking out, and I joined the Air Force. I don't set my goals too high now at this time in my life. My goals are to live each day and to keep doing what we're doing. June and I we work hard and we travel more than we really want to, but we're doing exactly what we really want to do with our lives right now. Now, it may not be the case a year from now or 5 years from now, but right now we're doing what we want to do with our lives. And that a person who can say, I like my job, I want to keep doing what I'm doing, there are not many. There are not too many. People always want to move on to something else. We do a little acting. We did a TV Western that both of us are in, and we've done 7 Movie of the Week for television, and we do that once in a while. We do TV specials and appearances like are coming up in Washington for the 4th of July celebration, things, kind of high points of the year, like this Academy of Achievement is a high point of our year for us. The big thing about the music in my life, we shared it. You know, we have a sharing marriage, and we share the road, we share the bedroom, we share the backstage, on stage, we share the music, the feeling and the emotion and the joy of it, you know, and the pain and the sadness of it. We share the love of our children. It would be terribly lonely not to have someone to share those things with me, and she's not only a lady who I share my life with, but she may have been the person responsible for me still being alive, she and God, because she came along at a time in my life that I was on self-destruct, and she saw what I was doing to myself, and she helped bring me back up out of it. And we fought and worked hard to keep our feet on the ground since then, but like I say, today's a good day. I would like to have been on that mountain when Jesus was preaching. I would like to have been listening. It's great we still have his words. I would like to have talked to John Wilkes Booth and asked him why. Because there's so much speculation. Just a little, to satisfy my own curiosity, you know. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any one particular person I'd like to talk to, but there are a lot of them I would, yeah. I'd like to talk to Pontius Pilate. I'd like to talk to the Apostle Paul. I wrote a book called Man in Black, and in the foreword of that book, I said this book is dedicated to E.J. Carter. That's my wife's father, who taught me to love the Word. He was a theologian, and he got me into Bible history and the Bible commentaries. And I discovered the joy of discovering spiritual truths. And it is a great joy, and the Bible is the source of the greatest joy of that. It's a great moral stabilizer in a world run amok. You know, it's an anchor for my own conscience and my own mind and for my own life. It keeps my feet on the ground, usually. And it answers the question, it gives you the answer to every problem you're facing, if you look for it. I found that out. God loved us. That's why he created us and he gave us free will, kind of like a farmer watching his chickens to see what they're going to do. But his desire is that we all come back to him. That's the way I think. That's my God. I thought it would be appropriate here in Montana to do, when I was called on to speak, June always says, if you're going to speak, have your guitar handy, or have something handy you can lean back on, because I'm not a public speaker. I had in my pocket this poem written by a guy named Badger Clark in the 30s called A Cowboy's Prayer. Thought it would be appropriate for here, that everybody's dressed Western, you know, that I would do on the first night of the Academy of Achievement things to do the Cowboy's Prayer. I don't remember it all by heart, but it's really nice and you can get the spirit of it. Lord, I've never lived where churches grow. I've loved creation better as it stood. The day you finished it so long ago and looked upon your work and called it good. Others seem to find you in the light that sifted down through tinted window panes. And yet I feel your presence here tonight in this dim, quiet starlight on the plains. That's part of the cowboy's prayer. I could go over a lot of kitsch phrases like know your own self, to thine own self be true, and the self-esteem and perseverance and confidence. That's all important. But the first thing is to know what you want to do. Set that goal out there and never lose sight of it and work toward it. And know that there are going to be byways and sidetracks. But keep persevering and keep on and do what you know that you want to do. It's something that has to be worked out with all that youthful vigor and energy and all the different things the mind can think about and meditate on. A person knows when it just seems to feel right to them, something they want to do. Feelings still got a lot to do with it.